Okay. So let me ask you a question. If there were no, if there was no government, would you murder people?
If there is no government, would I murder people? It would completely depend on my environment. So, like, let's say there was a situation in which, in order for me to survive, I had to kill a person, right? Let's say we lived in some like barbaric time, back before there was all of this, what do you call it? Politically correct and all this, back in a time where, like, in order for me to survive, I don't know, there was just people that hated me and were armed, and if I didn't kill them, then they'd killed me. Then maybe
Okay.
I would have to. I mean, I wouldn't want to probably, but
Okay.
I may have
Okay.
to.
Well, essentially, what I'm asking is the reason that you don't kill people because there's a law, or because you morally understand it to be wrong?
And this is like very hard to separate, right? Like, how much of me is because of societal upbringing and because of what society thinks is correct, and how much of me is what I independently think is correct. I mean, I don't think that naturally I'm a very like aggressive person. I don't think I like aggressively try to push people around or like try to. I don't think I would be able to justify to myself that like killing another person was correct for whatever reason. But that's not everyone, obviously. I mean, we still have murdering going on in our current society, and it's outlawed, right?
Exactly.
So, mhm.
Exactly. Exactly. Which to me illustrates the fundamental uselessness of laws themselves, right? So the idea that if we
so
just make a law for something,
mhm.
it's gonna prevent that or hinder it is completely
Well, it does. I
naive.
mean, yeah, I
Because
mean,
if
I,
people
I
get,
mean, it does though. Like,
it reminds me. It
as
reminds
soon
me.
as government
Okay.
disappears, like take the aftermath of Katrina, right, in New Orleans, like, as basically that was a situation where the only people that were around were non-government agencies, and it was sort of like chaos. Like, there was all these abandoned buildings with goods in them, and when there's nobody around to watch over those buildings and make sure that the things aren't taken out of those buildings, I mean, people that wouldn't normally steal had the opportunity to steal and not face any repercussion over it, right?
Yep.
And like, it wasn't government that made them do it. It wasn't like some external force was saying, "Hey, go loot those buildings and take everything that's inside." It was, "Hey, nobody's around to watch this stuff. The owners of the businesses aren't there. The police aren't here. Nobody's watching. I'm just going to take this stuff, and nobody's going to really find out about who it was." So they just did it. And I think that laws to say that this stuff will be punished if done does prevent some people from doing things that we generally consider to be in society a bad thing. TM. I think it does have preventative force. I
Okay.
completely disagree with you on that.
Well, there's a quote by Plato. He
Hmm.
said, "Good people do not need laws to act responsibly, and bad people will always find ways around the laws." Right. So the idea that a law will prevent a particular action is not necessarily true, because
They find ways
people,
to get around the
if
laws until they get caught. I mean, people do things that are against the law and get caught all the time. I mean,
true.
it does have ways of preventing their negative influence from affecting society over much. I mean, they may get away with it one or two times, but eventually a lot of these chronic, criminals do get caught and put in jail, and there are positive effects from that.
And a prime example of the not only the fundamental uselessness of laws, but of the entirely destructive nature that they wreak on society is the intemperance laws, the alcohol intemperance laws of the 1920s, right?
Mhm.
Which directly stimulated the creation of of the mafia, right? At that time, and the underground
Oh,
bootlegging
I don't
and
know about all
creation.
that. I don't know about the history of the mafia, so I can't really counter argue you on that. But actually, I think that the prohibition laws are a perfect example of a democratic system working, right? Like, a law got created that society wasn't really able to uphold. Enough people were against the entire idea of the law. A couple of years went by, and hey, look, the law got revoked, right? So, like, the system basically, a couple of people put their interests into government. It went into practice. It didn't work out. The people found out that it wasn't working, and it got revoked, right? So, like, that's kind of an example of law creation being overturned and sort of society recovering from an ill-made law.
Recovering until the drug laws started, right? And then and then the black market starts once again.
Well, so I guess that brings the whole argument, like, what's better, like outlawing something that has negative effect on society, or allowing it to exist and allowing those negative repercussions to play themselves out, right? So, like, your whole thing about victimless crime laws, which I totally disagree with. Let's start talking about that.
Sure.
Right?
Go ahead again.
So I think I brought this up to you before, of a victimless crime is drunk driving, right? So you're driving a car, you're getting drunk. Where's the victim, right? There's no victim. It's just me in my car getting drunk. Well, the victim comes when you in your car getting drunk slams into another car of a person not drunk, and then we have to deal with that. So is it better to let all of these drunk driving accidents happen and then prosecute the people that create these accidents? Or is it better to take a preventative measure and say, okay, let's take one step back. Instead of punishing the accidents that occur because of the drunk driving, let's punish the actual act of drunk driving itself, right? And so long as this law is relatively uniformly applied, you're preventing these situations that cause the accidents from happening in the first place, and preventing the injuries that occur from them, while still punishing the same criminals, right? So what are your responses to that?
Okay, so drunk driving laws, right? The way I see drunk driving laws, if a person is idiotic enough to drink until wasted and then get behind the wheel of a car, massive machine, metal machine that is capable
Yep.
of doing enormous damage.
Which people are capable of doing.
You're right. Yeah, people are capable of doing. So if somebody is idiotic enough to do that,
Yeah.
I don't think the existence of a piece of paper, scribbles on a piece of paper, is going to deter him if he doesn't even care about his own life, right? So he doesn't get behind the wheel of a car. A guy like that doesn't get behind the wheel of a car and think, you know what? There's a law against drunk driving. Maybe I shouldn't do this.
No, but look.
So what I'm saying
but
is,
here's the
hold
difference,
on,
right?
Hold on, wait, hold on. Let me finish.
Yeah.
So they're willing to put their life on the line, right? They don't care about forget about the law. They don't even care about their own life, right?
Sure.
So to me, what that kind of law succeeds in doing is punishing people who are competent and who are aware that maybe they did have a little bit to drink, but they're completely fine. They can drive. Many people completely drive home with a little bit of alcohol in their blood, and no problem, no accidents or anything. But if one of those people get pulled over by a cop, all of a sudden they owe the government $200, right? Because they drank a glass of wine, right? So it only succeeds in robbing people of their currency, is what I'm saying.
So one thing is, what if you're able to set the threshold of the law such that we're only punishing people who basically cannot be legally okay to drive? Like, if we're punishing people at 0.9 or whatever blood alcohol content, and there's just no way that you are driving a car and are able to actually manage driving that car responsibly, then that kind of eliminates the case where, hey, I'm driving a car and I'm totally fine. That eliminates the case that you brought up, right? If we're able to set the threshold of the law properly, then that kind of eliminates that particular case. The other thing is, the existence of the victimless crime law allows you to do preventative enforcement. So, like, before you get to the car accident where the innocent person is either killed or severely harmed, I'm able to stop your irresponsible act and punish it there, rather than waiting for you to slam into someone and then I can, take action. I'm able to take action when you're in the state that would cause the accident. Like, as an innocent bystander of someone who never drives drunk, there's a benefit to having a law in place where if people are driving irresponsible, not safe, I'm happy with the fact that those people can be caught before they slam into me. Like, I want that law to be in place because I want drunk driving to be punished, not slamming into somebody while I'm drunk driving. Okay. I don't want that to be punished. I want the state of drunkenness while driving. I want that to be punished.
All right. So it seems like what you are essentially doing is trying to predict two things: trying to predict the future and trying to enact a completely 100% safety society, completely, like how you say, a society with no risk, I guess. So the way I
Not no risk, but I want reduced risk
reduce
in
risk, yeah.
certain circumstances when possible. Yes.
Okay. So the danger with pre so essentially what you're talking about. Have you seen the movie Minority Report? Tom
Yeah.
Cruise. Okay, so I think that's
A while
essentially
back. Yeah.
what victimless crimes are aiming to do, right? In that they are trying to predict the future. In that you will cause damage, you will hit someone, you will kill someone, and so I have to, um, you know, rob you now, or kidnap you, or arrest you, or cage you now. Before you do that, right? Which is a very
Mhm.
difficult path to go down because where does that lead? How far down the path of pre-crime do you want to
I
go?
mean,
Like, do you
I'm
want to
not
monitor?
interested in predicting the future, but
You
if I
want to?
can do statistical analysis that says once people start drinking beyond a certain point, they are 200% more likely to cause an accident. If we can do the statistical analysis and say, hey, if we can get more people that are drunk off the roads, we're going to save more lives, then heck yeah, I'm interested in that risk prevention and benefiting the more responsible members of society by getting the irresponsible people off the road. Yes, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Okay. I mean, it kind of seems strange because it's like, what would be the end result? Having police officers in bars, watching how many drinks you have, or monitoring your blood before you leave the bar, or
For
what?
sure. I mean,
Where do
there's
you want to
cutoffs,
take this?
right? There are boundaries which we are not willing to go over which we're not willing to go as a society. There's always two extremes. There's complete and total freedom and no restrictions on behavior, and then there's the other extreme where we have a police state where everybody must do as society says, and you're completely have your own personal freedom. So there is two extremes there, and I think you can move the bar slightly in one direction or the other without completely going to one side or the other. There are different extremes and there's a middle ground, and I think the difficulty of and finesse that is required with which to structure laws is the finesse of balancing those two extremes of saying, hey, look, we don't want to take away everyone's freedoms, but there are certain extreme risky behaviors that can endanger others if allowed to continue. That is the middle ground we can step into and say, hey, look, you can go up to this far. As soon as you go this far, we're taking away the keys, because you're at that point you're endangering many other people at your own small amounts of personal freedom. I do not want to, like, I'm fine with you getting drunk in your own home. You're not really endangering other people in that situation. But once you get behind the wheel, that is the point at which society is going to say, "Hey, look, like if we allow this, we're endangering many other people at the expense of one person's small amounts of freedom." That is where we need to draw the line.
Or how about people who drive with a cigarette and a coffee, or reading the paper, or shaving while they're driving? I'm sure
Mhm.
that's pretty dangerous as well, right? So how do you?
Uh,
I'm sure that could
well,
easily cause or texting at the same time while you're
and
driving.
and and those types of actions are actually punished to a certain, like, if you are driving negligently, there are laws against that say, hey, look, you're going to be responsible for this accident. Like, if you're shaving while driving, that's irresponsible too. And if you cause accidents while doing that and it's provable, then you're going to have to face the
Oh no, that's
punishments
oh
for that.
yeah, oh yeah. That I understand. That, like, if there's an accident, and let's say you had witnesses that say, this guy was texting, or this guy had, a cigarette and a coffee in his hand. Sure, I can definitely understand that. But
Hmm.
so my whole approach with anarchy and voluntarism is basically that, to encourage people to have responsibility for their own actions, right? To
Right.
take ownership of themselves, to not
Hmm.
blame the consequences of their decisions on other people, right? Regardless
Right.
of regardless of what those decisions are.
Yeah,
Decision to
you're hoping
drive.
that everyone plays nice in
No, 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 no,
your
no.
little
I'm not.
sandbox.
No, I'm
Hmm.
not. Definitely not. I fully understand that there are going to be, crazy people, insane people, people who, who try to con other people. try to control other people, subjugate other people. But what I'm saying is
Sure.
that I I I completely understand the existence of those people. However, I do not think that they're in the majority. All right, they're in the
Mhm.
minority, and if they are in the majority, then we have different problems, right? But
Mhm.
I really do understand them to be in the significant minority. And so they don't really frighten me whatsoever. But
Okay.
yeah, that's essentially with anarchy is that everybody must take control of their own lives and the consequences of their own decisions, right? So
Mhm.
if you have a business and you choose, let's say your business is successful, you sell a lot of products, you gain a large market share, right? And then you take some of that and you gamble it, I don't know, somewhere on another business, and you lose all that money. Okay, so there's nobody there to bail you out. There's nobody there to give you a subsidy. There's nobody there to artificially prop you up, right? And
Uh-huh.
rightfully so, because that was your money. You made a conscious choice to invest it, and you lost, right? Why
Mhm.
should anybody be bear the burden of your faulty decisions, right? I don't expect anyone
Mhm.
to bear the burden of my faulty decisions, right? So
Mhm.
this is the essence of anarchy, is that people are empowered to run their own lives, to be their own masters, to be their own rulers, and that when you have a society of government, you inevitably have favoritism, and you have regulatory capture, you have lobbying, you have bribery, you have, these are not things that are new. These are not things that are novel. These are things that are built into the system. And I don't think that there is.
Mhm.
I don't think that there's an optimal government. I don't think that there's a change that we need to make. It's not about who's in. It's not about who's ruling. It's not about what kind of foreign policy we have, what kind of economic policy, what kind of interest rate we should have. No, it's about allowing people the freedom to transact with each other freely,
Uh-huh.
right? And with the full understanding that there is risk in freedom, right? There is risk.
Mhm.
We have risk every day, like
Sure.
so. So the other thing is that I wanted to point out is that even though we are all immersed in this state of society, we all do have a significant amount of anarchy in our society. For example, you wake up when you want, essentially, say the weekends, right? You
Mhm.
you choose the job that you want, right? You choose
Mhm.
the profession that you want. You choose
Mhm.
We make a lot of decisions on our own that have nothing whatsoever to do with government, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we really do have a small portion of our lives where we actually interact with government. Maybe when you do your taxes, or let's say you got stopped by a police officer. So most of the times we don't really, or go to the DMV, right? So I think that most of the time we are living anarchically. We are living, and also, even like, let's say you go to the mall, right? You
Well,
know,
I would say that you're living as mostly a free person, where you've conceded that certain things that could be free should not be free for so that we can enforce. So that we can. So, I mean, certain things, if we were allowed to do them, would negatively impact others. So,
mhm.
basically, yeah, we're mostly free, but we've conceded a few things, right? So that
Yeah.
other people aren't negatively impacted by those decisions. But continue.
So what I'm saying is, like, for the most part, we do live as in we are living in anarchy. Like, for example, police officers, the law enforcement, they do not prevent crime. Okay, they arrive after the fact. All right, a murder happens, they arrive afterwards. They do paperwork. You want
Sometimes they prevent. Sometimes they
Yeah,
prevent.
okay, maybe they do. In the significant minority, they prevent, but most of the
Mhm.
time, they are paper pushers. They arrive after the fact, okay? And let's say you walk to the mall, right? What's to stop anybody from shooting you, or killing, or stabbing you, or whatever, or beating you up? There's really nothing to stop them, right? And so
Right. Not
in
immediately.
essence,
Right.
in essence, we do live anarchically, right? Because somebody could kill you, but of course, then somebody will call the cops, and they'd run after that guy. So, but what I'm saying is, we every day rely on the inherent benevolent nature of humanity all the time. Whenever you go out into society, whenever you go into large areas of when large groups of people gather,
Uh-huh.
this is this is how society would be absent government. I think it wouldn't be very much different
I
than
mean,
today.
oh, well, I mean, you have to. I mean, you really have to separate how people behave every day from whether or not government would exist, right? Like, so, I mean, if there wasn't, if there weren't laws and the means by which to enforce these laws, like, how much of this behavior would change in certain individuals, right? Like, you're saying the inherent benevolent nature of human beings. I say our inherent behavior is not necessarily benevolent or evil. Like, it's not one or the other. And so I really don't think that you should be using that term. I don't think that it's accurate. People are trying to survive. Like, we're basically we are just living beings that we've grown up through the process of evolution. We have grown into a position of superiority over our environment. We don't have any predators, but basically that inherent need to survive is still there. And some people are able to compromise morals to further their own survival, and some aren't, right? And so I don't think that, if you took away all laws and all police and suddenly we're all living in an anarchistic society, I don't believe as many people would behave the way that they behave today. Some people would continue behaving normally and able to deal with the presence of others and the presence of people of other races and sizes and colors and all these other things. Some people would deal with that just fine, like you and me, and some people wouldn't. And so I think that you need to be able to, like, in your mind, you need to be able to separate what is being caused by the existence of government and society and what is not. I don't agree with your conclusions there.
Okay. Well, another thing that I see in a stateless society is that I would assume everyone would be armed, first of all, because since there is no law enforcement, state supported law enforcement
Uh-huh.
that we would all believe to be protecting us. I think everyone would basically have basic weapons about them at all times. And I
Mhm.
think that the existence of that would necessarily produce lower crime. Because what is the use of a person in a well-armed, where everybody is well-armed? What is the use of one person trying to, murder a few people when they know they themselves are going to get murdered as well, right? So
Mhm.
the significant reduction of crime as a result of being well-armed. And I mean, this is a phenomenon that has been it's noticed in many cities across the United States. I think Chicago has one of the highest gun control, uh, strictest gun control laws, and they have the highest gang violence and criminality as well. So
Mhm.
in general, a armed society is a polite society, right? And so yeah, so that's the first thing. And the second thing is I definitely do agree with you that human nature is not fundamentally good or fundamentally evil.
Mhm.
I definitely do think that there is it's human conditioning, more accurately said, that people embody the ideals that they grew up in. So a child growing up in the KKK household will be racist, right? A child growing up in France will speak French. A child growing up in the Amish country will be an Amish person, right? So
Mhm.
there is no absolute um, nature of man. So it's genuinely malleable, is what I'm saying. So I agree with
To
you.
an extent, right? So, like, people are influenced by their environment, but sometimes people come out of a good environment and turn out to be not so good people, and vice versa. Like, people are influenced by their backgrounds, but are not completely subject to them. I mean, uh, people. It has. There's a lot to do with it. And we're still discovering more about the human brain and the human psychology. It's not a completely explored field, completely solved field, but my belief, because it still has to be a belief because there's not sufficient evidence to support one or the other, is that there's a little bit of both. So there's some biology in there, some just basically how you're wired in your brain, and that's partly through mental development as a child and as an adult. There's mental development going on there, but there's also just some biological facts. Like, if you're born with a smaller, let's say, gray matter section of the brain or whatever. That's going to affect you as a person, as well as sort of like your background, your education, your parents, and all these other factors. I think it's a conglomeration of everything. There's biology in there as well as psychology. So I don't think that people are completely a function of their environment. So if you're going to say that we're going to live in an anarchist society and if everyone gets along, then we're going to produce people with less criminal behavior or something. I don't think that that's a conclusive argument that you can have. I think that there's a lot of room to argue in there. So what I will say, though, is that I think that you can't count on everyone being able to afford to be armed, and I don't think you can count on everyone to be able to afford to be armed with as many people behind them. CEO of a large business, for example, is going to be able to command a lot more people than you're going to be able to as a independent farmer, let's say, right? And so, like, if I decide I want more farmland for my business and I have sufficient military might with which to secure your farmland without you being able to do much about it, that isn't exactly a very fair society in my mind. And I think that those types of things would eventually occur. People with a lot of money being able to throw their weight around and without any sort of uniform way of stopping that behavior.
Okay, I mean, actually, the argument that in a stateless society that some people say a warlord would come up and control everyone, or a CEO would gain access to resources and buy up all the weapons and tanks and everything, and control everyone. That kind of argument to me is similar to we should not like, let's say a doctor were to tell a patient, I shouldn't try to cure you of your cancer because you might get cancer in the future again. I shouldn't go to the gym and try to work out and lose weight because I might get fat and flabby again in the future.
If I think that the situation that would be caused by allowing businesses to basically have their own military, if I think that future is a worse future than the future of the now, then I don't necessarily want your future. That's the whole point.
Agreed. Yeah, I think we can agree on that. That we have a significant amount of disagreement with the way we see.
So let's talk about some of these. So let's talk about some of these like more difficult things to discuss. I think that I think one of the things that's going to be difficult to accomplish is like public defense, right? So national defense. So how would national defense work in a society like yours?
All right. So so a hypothetical situation of let's say a stateless society begins to develop. And by the way, a stateless society, like for example, you mentioned Katrina, right? And that being equivalent to anarchy. Whereas I wouldn't necessarily say it is, because that's kind of like saying that we can produce a population that understands atheism and understands why religion is an illusion if we just murder all the priests and pastors and and bishops. That will produce a somewhat society
I know your argument.
Absent religion.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand your argument. What you're saying is that if you have a government if you have a society that's controlled by government, and then you suddenly take the government away, those people are of different quality than you would have in a society where there is no government to start with, and people are sort of brought up in a different way to understand how to operate within a society that has no government. So they wouldn't be just like randomly looting, because they've grown up to understand that in order to cooperate in this society, in order to exist in this society, you have to not loot when people are not watching. You know what I mean? Basically, your argument. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's a very theoretical argument that I think is very difficult to support with any sort of facts. But I mean, I understand the theory there. I'm not sure exactly if that would work out the way you're thinking, but maybe. So.
So essentially, what I'm saying is anarchy is not chaos, right? Which is the general understanding of what anarchy is. Anarchy simply means without rulers, right?
Without government.
Without rulers, not without rules, right? Because we always will live with rules, not necessarily rules that are man-made or arbitrarily written down by a small group of people, but rules of society, the laws of morality, right? These are not rules that were created by any one person. These are rules that we all commonly understand, like
Well,
no.
so we can't say we all, right? Because everyone kind of has their own rules. I mean, without sort of like agreeing on anything, people kind of like just do what they want.
Mhm.
And sometimes what they want is something that selfishly benefits themselves. So like if I know that I can double my income and there's not going to be any sort of like negative consequence to that, then I'll just double my income, right? But let's say that what you're doing is you're taking the farmland away from someone else and evicting them. Maybe you don't think that evicting that person from their farmland is a negative consequence as you as a person, right? So your own set of rules just say that I'm going to take what I want for survival. Those are your own personal rules, and you personally agree that those things are okay, but most other people don't. And so, like, society without laws is basically a society with no rules, because in order for there to be any rules, we all kind of have to agree that those rules are correct. If we don't all agree on anything, then we don't have a society, is basically my argument, is that without coming together and setting up anything that works for our mutual benefit, then how can we realistically work together? Like whenever I work with someone else, let's say I want somebody to build a house for me. We both sign a contract. Like I'm going to pay you this much, and at the end of the day, I'm going to have a house. We've signed a contract, and there's a bunch of laws and rules and things that we've both agreed upon in order to get this done. And so a society without some sort of societal contract, without some sort of agreement upon the things that we all are going to do in order to make this a beneficial thing, without those laws, without those rules, we don't really have a society. We just have a bunch of people all living in the same area. And eventually that just is not going to work out. But
Okay. So let's say you look back at society, when governments were smaller, or we'll say stateless societies, like I don't know if you can call them stateless societies, but let's say the Native American Indians, the North America,
uh-huh.
they did fight with each other, right? They did,
Yeah.
kill each other, maybe over land, over resources, perhaps, right?
Hmm.
So you can say that there is violence even in a society where there isn't a formalized institution of government, right?
Yeah. There's,
But at the same time, you have to realize, or you have to come to terms with the fact that the violence that is sanctioned by government, is much worse, much graver. The amount of carnage and slaughter that happens as a direct result of government forming. Again, coming back to the idea of sovereign immunity, that when a conquistador comes to this country and comes in the name of some emperor an ocean away,
mhm.
he's free to, do whatever he wants in the name of government, right? He's not a murderer, right? Or when a soldier goes into overseas to Iraq or Afghanistan and, kills a bunch of innocent men, women, and children, that's the war on terror, and it's not murder. So we have, when you have the existence of government, you're skewing the laws of morality. You're distorting it for people. It's not clear anymore what is moral and what is not moral, right? And so that is one of the primary problems I have, is that government already has a history of being bloody and murderous and genocidal, and I cannot see a society that would be much worse than that. We've already been down in the ditches, clawing at each other's necks over pieces of cloth, and pledges of allegiance and pieces of paper we call constitutions, right? We've already done that. I think it's time that we, start doing something a little bit different, because obviously 250 million people dying in the 20th century over a piece of cloth is not necessarily what I would call civilization.
So, I think we have a disagreement on what we would call success, right? So, do you think that 7 billion people living on the same planet, the same piece of area, compared to like, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands before we had government. Do you think that the growth from like tens of thousands of people to 7 billion, do you think that that is any form of success despite the negative things that have occurred? Do you think that you know solving the problems of diseases and our technological advances and our explorations into space and our insane number of success stories that humanity has to share, do you think that those are attributable at all to government, or do you think that that has absolutely nothing to do with the formation of government and only the negative consequences of our history as human beings? Only those negative things are the consequences of government, right? None of the positive things, all the bad things.
Yeah, so a lot of people can point to, like say NASA, we have this space exploration program. Look at that, that's wonderful. It's government funded, right? We have USPS. It's wonderful. We can move pieces of paper around, and without government, we wouldn't be able to move pieces of paper around, right? We have the Department of Education, right? It's wonderful. We're educating our kids. Without that, our kids would not be educated. Illiteracy would be rampant. So the idea is that reality is optimal, and that there is no other possibility that reality could have occurred absent this coercive monopoly on violence known as government. So it's the idea of the broken window fallacy, which is which is that all this resources and stolen money, stolen, right? That's debatable, but
Not
money.
stolen.
Okay, so currency was devoted towards space exploration by force, right? Rather than allowing, let's say, imagine a world where there was competing space exploration
Now,
companies.
so the
So
big
we can't
problem.
even imagine that, right?
Well, hold on. I think that so in this situation, you have a situation where government has put funds and money towards a goal that it is not immediately profitable, right? Like it is not profitable. Like back in the days where we were first starting to explore space, back in the days where we were first thinking about going to the moon, back in those days, the amount of expense that a private company would have to lay out in order to possibly get themselves off the planet and into space and possibly from there onto the moon was an incredible amount of money, just an insane amount of resources at the time for a specific private company, big or small, doesn't matter really what size. Nobody was going there yet, right? It was just an insane amount of resources to even think about accumulating to devoting to a project that has no near immediate or near immediate sort of profit to it, right? So therefore, no private company wanted to do that. There was nobody in the U.S., nobody in Russia, nobody in anywhere, any piece of the world that wanted to put those funds towards space exploration. So nobody did. And the U.S. government said, hey, you know what? I know it doesn't have any immediate profit. I know there's no foreseeable immediate benefit to doing this. But regardless of that fact, we want to push towards space exploration. And so the government was this third party that has no bottom line profit in mind, no end game of making money off of this venture. Their goal was, we want to get ourselves off this planet. We want to see, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get there. And so that was in a particular area in which government showed that even though there's no like immediate benefit to doing this, we are going to decide to do it as a society, and we're going to go get there and come whatever it takes, we're going to get to the moon. And so I think that this is an area where government has shown that there are positive benefits to having a society like a structure outside of the private market, outside of the free market system, by which we can accomplish things as a group of people without profit in mind.
Okay. Well, we should wrap this up. It's getting a little
Yeah.
long, but all right. So I'll just finish up my remarks, and you can finish up your remarks, and we'll finish
Okay,
up.
sure. Okay.
So as a response to that, I would say that your idea that there is no profit to be made in this field or that field, I think is extraordinarily how you say presumptuous.
I'm not saying that there's zero profit in space exploration for the forever, for like the entire rest of human existence. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that the amount of investment it would have taken a private company in order to get ourselves off the planet and to the moon was too high at the time. I mean, nobody did it, right? It wasn't like illegal to build a spaceship and go to the moon. Anybody could have done it. It's just that private companies were not willing to foot the risk. And that's where government can come in and say, we're going to take that risk. We're not going to go out of business. Like we aren't suddenly going to become not profitable if we do this. We're just going to do it because we as a society, as a group of people, and I know you're going to argue those points, but whatever. I'm going to use it because it's easier language to use and we have a short amount of time. But we as a society are going to take this venture regardless of whether or not profit immediately generates from this.
Okay. So what I would say is
same thing with public defense. Public defense is not like a profitable venture, but we do it because we don't want Russians to kill us, basically.
Okay. All right. Okay. So basically, what I would say is the nature of business in the free market is that you're right. It's all about profit, right? Profit is the bottom line. It's the way that entrepreneurs and business owners understand how their products and services are being received by the consumer, right? So it's a feedback mechanism, right? So when a business person creates a product or service that people actually want and are willing to voluntarily pay for, then they're showered with enormous profits. And what this does is, maybe he takes the profits, puts it back into his own business, builds his business, employs more people, so in turn increases the wealth of society, increases the standard of living of society, right? So to say that profits only benefit the entrepreneur, I think is not to give it the full respect, right? Profit is something that benefits society as a whole, right? Like Steve Jobs, who created all of his products, he became extraordinarily successful, right? But that's not to say that that's not at the expense of everyone else, right? He enriched the lives of millions of people, right? So in the same way, if something is not profitable, or if something is too expensive and nobody is willing to voluntarily pool their capital or resources into making a business out of it, for example, let's say space, to force people to do it by means of government, and yes, that is force, to force people to do it by the barrel of a gun is fundamentally immoral, right? Because people who don't want to voluntarily do something, there's a reason that they don't want to do it. There's a reason. Like business people don't go into business to lose money, right?
I mean, would you say that we didn't want to go to the moon as a society? Would you think that if you took a poll among people and if you took a vote, would you say that people would not want to have gone to the moon in 1970?
It doesn't matter. I mean, to me, it doesn't really matter. Like whether we went to the moon or not. I have no idea how long it would have taken. Let's say if government had not intervened, how long it would have taken. Let's say for a private company to develop technology to go to the moon. But what I'm saying is, if there's no demand for it, then there shouldn't be a company, because if you try to artificially create a demand, you are introducing force and violence into a peaceful society by doing that. That's what I'm saying.
But if you look at the free market, there can be demand for something, but no business may be willing to take the risk to produce the supply, right? Like something may, like I'm saying, every exploration into a new market that doesn't yet exist, has risk associated with it, right? And businesses are necessarily both short-sighted and selfish. Businesses are short-sighted because they want to do something today that is going to secure their livelihood and success tomorrow. They're not necessarily looking for what's going to be good for everyone else in 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. They're not necessarily looking at that sort of timeline. They're looking at the Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 timeline. They're looking at what is going to make our investors happy, what is going to keep us in business, what is going to allow us to take home a salary tomorrow, and what is going to keep our business going a few years from now. They're not necessarily looking at the effects of pollution on our on our ecology, or how all of our pollution is contributing towards this possible global warming effect, or how getting to the moon in 10 years is going to allow us to build colonies on other planets in 500 years. They're not looking at these sorts of timelines. They're looking at how risky is this venture? Is it going to make me money in the short term? Is it going to allow my business to grow in the long term? And that's basically what a business is looking for. They're looking for a short-sighted type of view in the scope of a couple of years to maybe 10 years at the max or something. And they're looking at what is good for me, what is good for my business, not what is good for society, what is good for everyone. And that's where I think that business stops, and some other structure or um, uh, some other sort of representative structure of everyone's interest begins. That's my theory.
Okay, so two things I'll comment on. The first thing is that I definitely agree that businesses, fundamentally only care about their own profits. It's a selfish, endeavor,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you could say they're greedy, right? um, and then the other thing is that you can
In a factual way, yes.
when you talk about society, like we have to do what's good for society, that really reminded me of what Hitler told his country before he exterminated millions of Jews, right? We have to do what's good for society, right? So what is good for society when a
There's a big
ruler
difference there, though, because
when a ruler talks about what's good for society,
Mhm.
he most often refers to what's the destruction of individual rights, right? Because when you talk about society as a big blob, as like we're all one amorphous group of people, you are immediately
Mhm.
destroying individuality, right? And
Mhm.
you can't do that because it's like there's no such thing as Republicans, Democrats. There's no such thing as black people or white people. They're just people, right? We're just people. You can say they're all white, but they're
Sure.
all completely different. You can say they're all Republican, but they're all completely different. So you can't lump people into one amorphous blob like that. And once you begin to do that, you immediately destroy people's individuality, and you immediately begin to trample on their individual rights. And that is fundamentally the basis of pretty much every totalitarian regime in history, right? Is the trampling of individual rights, which basically leads to a cascade effect of mass murder, genocide, politicide, democide, things like that. So that's the first thing.
Mhm.
And then the other thing is, the profits is businesses. Yeah, businesses do care about their profits. That is the primary reason they are in business. They're not in business to lose money, right? If they were,
For
they
sure.
wouldn't be in existence, right? So
Yep.
so the only way that they can secure profits, you're right, that they're not looking, let's say 10 years, 12, 20 years, 100 years, they're not looking that far. But I don't think they really have to even because, what their function is in society is to satisfy consumer demand, right? So if they're satisfying consumer
Mhm.
demand, they are by definition creating benefit in society, increasing the wealth in society, providing jobs for people, increasing the standard of living of those that benefit from that company, right? So
Mhm.
it is an endeavor of supreme selfishness and greed, but they don't function in a vacuum, right? A lot of people benefit from an enormous business like Walmart. Everybody hates Walmart because it's so huge. But
Mhm.
imagine Walmart just disappears tomorrow. How many people would just be thrown on the street, unemployed, right, and destitute? because their livelihoods were just taken away from them, right?
Mhm.
and to a lot of people, that's their livelihood. People who have low skill level, they maybe that's their only option is to work at Walmart, right?
Mhm.
So or any other fast food company. So like McDonald's too, right? Some people say they work for slave wages. Well, if they could work at better businesses, they would. But obviously, they're working there because that's their best option.
Mhm.
So yeah, so in securing their profits, in securing their growth, they must serve society. They must satisfy consumer demand. So so you want to finish? Once you finish, you say the last word, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay, sure.
So let's finish up.
So basically, businesses satisfy consumer demands, and they play nice, and they act with other people's interests in mind, so long as they have to, right? But basically, if there's a way to generate more profit that maybe incurs on other people's freedoms or what have you, if they can do that in such a way where there's fewer negative repercussions, then maybe that's all right. So I guess my whole problem with this entire system is that once you have basically you're saying that military becomes a private endeavor, right? So people are allowed to produce whatever weapons they want and sell them to whoever they want. My big problem is that who is going to be able to afford all these amazing weapons? It's going to be the people with more money, right? It's going to be the people that are rich, people that are in charge of big businesses. And it's also going to be the businesses themselves, right? I mean, what's better, buying out another company for their entire worth or taking their company from them for very little cost to you, basically the cost of employing a bunch of military folks with guns and tanks and bombs and whatnot. It's much easier to grow my business by taking over other businesses than it is for me to actually grow it through the means of buying them out. So what I think would inevitably occur here is you have businesses becoming larger and larger by taking other businesses by less than benevolent means. And I see basically this becoming an oligarchy. Basically, it'll become, de facto, it'll become basically a society with the rich members basically getting to dispense justice as they see fit. If you don't agree with me, then talk to my tanks and bombs and such. And if you don't want to buy my products, well, I've bought out, quote unquote, all the other businesses that do the same business as me. So you don't really have a choice. If your choices are Walmart or Walmart, you're going to go to Walmart. So that's essentially what I think would happen here. If that wouldn't happen, if there wouldn't be natural demand for tanks and all these other weapons of destruction, right? If there wasn't any demand for that, then you have a different problem where you suddenly look like a very juicy target for Russia. So those are essentially what I think would happen with this type of society, and that's basically why I'm against it.
Okay, fair enough. I think you stated your position well.
Thank you.
So we'll.
I'm getting a little tired, but
yeah, that's okay.
So I was able to hold up a good argument.
No problem. It was good. So so this concludes the part 2, rather lengthy part 2 of our debate.
Yeah.
With
I'm looking at the time now. Oh my god.
Yeah, with John Cymerman.
Yep.
So I don't know if we'll be able to do a part 3, but if we do, that would be nice. But we'll see how.
Yeah,
that
we'll
goes.
see.
All right. So then. So that's it for this debate, part 2. This is Peaceful Anarchism on the Voluntary Virtues Network. Wishing everyone have a wonderful day. Take care.
Yep.
Bye.
Nice talking to you all. Bye-bye.